Well, hello there, friends. It's Mystery here, and today I have a bit of a concession to make. Scum is not the weakest class in the game. In fact, if I could do a do-over, which I guess I could, but this will serve as a good enough stand-in until then. If I could do a do-over on my rankings of classes power, I would certainly put him in at least 5th place. I mean, the rocket launcher alone would put him above last place, and maybe even, if I'm feeling generous, a 4th place finish. But we'll see that discussion for another day. Today is all about that last place finisher, the Ogryn. They say nice guys finish last, and the Ogryn is just too nice. The Ogryn is a uniquely bad class in the game of Darktide. He has some tremendous weaknesses that were masked by his rework in spring of 2025. In spring of 2025, and this is the reason why I'm seeing a lot of people commenting on my videos saying, whoa, I came back and played Ogryn and like he sucks now, like in comparison to what was going on all last year. What happened? Well, in spring last year, they reworked Ogryn, and now I'll put the picture-in-picture on screen of his talent tree. This is what his talent tree was made to look like, and it still retains this image to this day, but the talents overall were very strong as compared to a lot of other classes in the game because we hadn't had the other reworks yet. But even by today's standards, I think a lot of the talents would be very strong. What I made videos on at the time expressing was that I honestly felt like Ogryn was a bit overstrong for most difficulties in the game. And this came down to the fact that most of his design was focused around having massive damage reduction and having easily accessible stagger as well as just damage. So this guy could walk through a map on Heresy difficulty or below, and keep in mind, Heresy was the second highest difficulty back at the time, and literally take almost no damage the entire time, because he was rocking about 65% total damage reduction, meaning a couple of hits, like 3 or 4 hits from random poxwalkers and stuff during combat would deal a tiny percentage of your overall 300 health pool, right? So this guy just had so much beef to him and so much damage reduction that effectively his health pool, the damage that it would take to put an Ogryn down was far more than most enemies could deal on these lower difficulties. And what that led to was Fat Shark looking at the win rates of their characters and saying, holy shit, Ogryn and RBs are fucking cleaning up out here. And that was because, and Ogryn was first place, by the way, that was because, as I said, on these low difficulties, you could actually just face roll the entire thing. It was impossible for the enemies to deal enough damage to you to cause you to die and therefore lose the game. And Arbides has less health, so he was less successful at that. But yeah, that sort of tankiness and the ability to just light spam everything with batter and bleed everything to death and stagger everything else made it so that many enemies couldn't even stand toe-to-toe with you. You could literally just 1v1 a Plague Ogryn by holding down left mouse, and he would deal, I think, like 5 damage to you overall. That sort of power was very easily accessible to players as well. And so, yes, these two classes had the best win rates in the game. And so what is Fat Shark going to do? Well, they have to tone this down, right? You shouldn't have two classes that are heads and shoulders above the rest of the roster in terms of their performance. And this is one of the situations where, yes, I understand it's going to balance it better for like lower end players, but it has a dramatic knock-on effect for the upper echelon, for players playing at Damnation or what is now Auric and above, because the Ogryn was just barely surviving because of those extra stats he had. The fact this character could apply bleeds faster than any other class, the fact that this character could stagger better than any other class, the fact that this character was so tanky and could trade hits and not have to worry about his health values too much, that sort of stuff was helping him to succeed in an otherwise very hostile environment. And it's almost like Darktide is a game that is specifically designed to fuck with Ogryns, and he has very few countermeasures to actually combat that. And that is the main weakness of Ogryn. This is something I'm going to be drilling down on here in this video today, as I'm going to explain the absolute vulnerability of the Ogryn class, which leads the Ogryn to having to play at Damnation and above as the most scaredy cat class imaginable, which is like unfathomable. Note that there is one thing on this class that is a saving grace for him. And this saving grace that we'll talk about here first is called Loyal Protector. It's the taunt ability, guys. The taunt ability has an ability modifier that everybody takes called No Pain, and No Pain gives you 10% of your toughness every 3 seconds, and it gives you an additional 0.5% of your toughness, or sorry, it gives you 10% of your toughness every second, plus 0.5% per enemy in the radius added to that. So you can end up regenerating, 20% of your toughness every second for 10 seconds. It's a huge boost to your toughness, and it doesn't have to, it has a very large range. It staggers enemies, and it can just like collect more and more enemies in its taunt radius and boost your toughness regeneration. This ability is an absolute godsend for the Ogryn. Because the Ogryn's main vulnerability, the reason the Ogryn is the weakest class in the game, in my approximation, is he has no way of defending himself at range. The Ogryn will get caught moving from point A to point B by like 1 or 2 small gunners and have literally no reasonable recourse against them, right? Let's assume this situation, right? I need to move from one box to another. They're a couple, 30 feet, 40 feet apart, right? Every other class in the game, what can they do against being attacked by a variety of small gunners, right? You have the Zealot. The Zealot, first of all, is super evasive, super dodgy. He can just bullet slide across all that gap, probably be fine, not even take a single hit. But even if he was shot at, he has a talent called Second Wind that not only will he dodge the damage of that range attack, but he will get 15% of his toughness back just for dodging it. The Arbites could literally just face tank any damage he takes moving point A to point B. He has Walk It Off, which regenerates, I think it's like 3.3% of his toughness every second, as long as he's spending 1 stamina. Then he's got the dog proximity thing, where you get 5% of your toughness every single second when you're near your dog. He can get it. The Arbites is like almost impossible to build in such a way that you don't have at least 3 or 4 methods of regenerating toughness just by like passively walking around. The Veteran has not only Shout, but he has his, Take a Breath or whatever. Basically, you get 5% of your toughness every single second just for existing. And of course, the Veteran has the ability to shoot things at range and get a ton of toughness back from that. The Psyker has myriad ways of regenerating toughness at range, either by spending or like creating peril. He can get it from crits. He can just straight up dodge or even block range attacks with Force Sword. And I think, am I missing it? Oh, and Hive Scum, of course. Hive Scum actually has one of the better ways of ignoring this sort of like pestering little range damage shots, which is he gets 10% of his toughness every second for 3 seconds when he takes toughness damage from range attacks. So every class in this game, except Ogryn, has a counter or a way to avoid taking ranged pot shots. The Ogryn, because he is so large and so exposed and has such a poor bullet slide, he is one of the worst in the game, and enemies can reacquire him faster than any other class after he finishes sliding, is going to take pot shots at range, and he is also the only character that doesn't have any way to deal with it. So your choices are, in this situation, you could bring the Slab Shield, I guess, and then just block. That works to an extent, but now you're moving slow as fuck, and enemies are creeping up behind you, whatever it is. You could try to shoot them, but the Ogryn, for some reason, every single one of his weapons has the longest draw animation in the entire game. This is supposed to be a character who is strong, right? Why does it take the Ogryn 3 times as long to pull out any of his weapons as it does for a Veteran to pull out a plasma gun, right? The true absurdity of the Ogryn is that not only does he have to get over to those enemies and actually melee attack them to get his toughness back, but it's not even reasonable to like pull out your range weapon to try and attack them, because it would take so long to pull out your heavy stubber, rack the bolt, and then fire off shots, and it's so imprecise when you do. A lot of times you might have to waste a bunch of shots. Meanwhile, you're getting meleeed because you're a fucking walking side of a barn. So yeah, he can't retaliate in ranged. He can't cover from anything because he's so large. He can't slide and be evasive because he is so slow. He's like the slowest class in the game, and he's immediately gassed in terms of stamina. yeah, he is just miserable in these sort of exchanges. And the problem becomes, it's like, oh yeah, for lower difficulties, you just take the damage and you're like, fuck it, no sweat. I don't care about a little bit of toughness. I don't care about a little bit of health. What's 8 health out of 300. But once you advance to difficulties that actually deal damage to you, that sort of stuff doesn't cut it anymore. You cannot take damage just willy-nilly at damnation and above. You take damage and you are wasting resources. Every class that is competitive in this game should have a way to avoid taking damage at all costs, right? You should not be taking health damage excepting when you are getting overwhelmed. And this is the real crux for Ogryn, is that without taunt, this class has no reasonably decent way of regenerating toughness. The only methods of regenerating toughness, let's go back to our picture-in-picture here. The only methods he has of regenerating toughness, I think a lot of people don't put this puzzle together, is firstly, he can brace his range weapon for 12.5% of his toughness regen per second. So he's standing around with no block. He's bracing his weapon, so he's moving slow as fuck, and he's getting 12.5% of his toughness per second. This is okay in like when nothing is attacking you, but you could not do this in moving from point A to point B, right? You're caught out in the open. This is not going to help. The other two down here are best defense and smash 'em. These are exclusive, so you can only get one or the other. You get 5% when you hit on a melee attack, or 15% if it's a heavy attack. Great if there is an enemy around to melee, if the enemy that's around to melee isn't a bulwark, right? So you can end up very easily in situations, and this is a similar situation to what I ended up when I was doing a challenge run yesterday, is you can end up in a situation where you cannot land melee attacks, and therefore you can't recuperate toughness. And this is shored up, this is masked by Loyal Protector usually. Loyal Protector is the one that can sort of alleviate these issues because you can taunt. You don't need to be immediately next to enemies in order to melee them. It'll give you your toughness back without risk. And this is something that just basically gives the Ogryn a feature that he should have by default and equalizes him versus everybody else in the cast, right? Everybody else in the cast can just get a bunch of their toughness back just from dodging or using stamina or even just taking damage gets their toughness back. The Ogryn is the only class here who actively has to go and melee enemies over and over and over in order to get the toughness, or stand there with his gun drawn out and moving at 1 mile an hour like a dickhead. The only other ways he has regenerating toughness in his entire tree are on his abilities. So he's got Loyal Protector, of course, which is the go-to. He's got Point Blank Barrage, which I'm about to rant on in 2 seconds, so don't worry. Because Bullet Bravado here, Jesus fucking Christ, this is so bad. He's got Indomitable over here, which can give you up to 100%. It can refill your toughness, but it doesn't do anything after that. So even with Indomitable, you charge through enemies, you knock a bunch of them over, you get all your toughness back, but that doesn't do anything to stop those ranged attackers from plinking you down, to stop the little chip damage that's going out that is hurting you that you aren't able to recuperate. The only ability on this entire tree, and that's it, by the way. Everything else down here, there is nothing else, literally nothing else in the entire tree that will, except for Pained Outburst here, I guess. But there's literally nothing else in the entire tree that gives you toughness over time, or toughness for doing this, or toughness for doing that, right? He has 0 sustain for his toughness, except Loyal Protector. Loyal Protector gives him something very, very valuable, which is regaining toughness over time. This is a character who, as I described earlier, is a walking side of a barn. He is going to get targeted. He is going to get attacked. He is going to get picked on by tons and tons of targets. And in order to attack at all, right, in order to pull out your gun and shoot some retaliatory shots, which will take 8 seconds, or in order to swing your weapon at all and hit enemies, your attacks are so slow that you are going to take attacks in that process, right? You are going to take attacks, and the expectation is that you will take those attacks on the nose because you have damage reduction, and then you will retaliate and you will get that toughness back thanks to increased toughness regeneration and like best defense and smash them and stuff. But it just isn't enough, right? And obviously misses the mark in the situation where you can't retaliate with melee, where you're just getting destroyed. So you end up in situations where either you have too low of HP to effectively engage and actually like start hitting enemies, because if you take one attack you're going down, or you end up in situations where you can't even engage on the enemies because there is nothing in here. If you don't have steady grip, you can't get toughness back from shooting enemies and killing them. You literally get 0% from shooting enemies and killing them, unless of course you're using point blank barrage. So let's address why I'm bringing this up and make a finer point about it. I was doing a challenge run yesterday, and that challenge run was to take an Ogryn. This was a class chosen by my chat, from 0 to 30, and then from Havoc 1 to 40. And this had a myriad of other challenges associated with it. My chat was able to ban out abilities and ban out weapons and stuff like that. And I realized very quickly what a mistake I had made in ranking Hive Scum the weakest class. Because as soon as Taunt was banned away from me, as soon as the best weapons were like the 1 or 2 best weapons were banned away from Ogryn, he is abysmal. He is so like miserable to play with, because you cannot take like any damage at all. If you take damage, the only way you're getting this back is by going over and finding enemies and meleeing them. And that is just not feasible in a lot of situations, right? You have to end up playing like you are some sort of like Splinter Cell, where you are covering and cowering from enemies and only engaging them in the absolute most favorable situations. Meanwhile, we have the Arbites, who's doing everything that the Ogryn needs to be doing. The Arbites can straight up run in the open. He can just tank enemy shots to his fucking face because he regenerates a percentage of his toughness every single second while he's using stamina. He can add to that by, oh shit, I even forgot. If you take the talent that gives you block, if you do block, you get 15% of your toughness over 5 or over 3 seconds if you block an attack. So you can literally just have the shield run at enemies. You know, you lose your stamina by blocking, and you're blocking all those attacks, and then you can start to take the attacks to yourself, and then you can put the block up again and get your toughness back, and then you can charge and get all your toughness back. Like, and all those cooldowns are way shorter than anything the Ogryn has, plus he's more nimble. The Ogryn's existence is just miserable. It is so like absolutely miserable to play. Just the simple like task of, oh, I hear a trapper coming around this corner is like an endeavor for him. Oh fuck, okay, I hear a trapper coming. Okay, I gotta pull out my gun. Click. Okay, I got it ready. Okay, I gotta aim at this trapper. Oh my god, I just got hit 5 times from enemies around me because my hitbox is so fucking huge. Okay, I shot the trapper, but my aim reticle is like all over the place because I've got the fucking like Ripper gun or the heavy stubber or whatever. Like, half of his guns feel like absolute dog shit, and they can't hit anything past like 15 feet. So you just end up shooting so much at this target, you finally kill him, you've taken a bunch of hits in the process, and then the next time you pull out the gun, you're like, oh my god, I forgot to fucking reload. Okay, now I'm ready to fire, finally, 8 seconds later. Like, this class has a slower weapon equip time, a slower reload time than some of the heaviest weaponry in the rest of the entire game, and it's like he is so unprepared for what Darktide has become. He has no place outside of taunt and stagger at higher difficulties. Let's go in on point blank barrage now for a minute, because this ability is so comically bad. I have no concept of what purpose this would have in the game right now. This ability has an 80-second cooldown. Why? What in God's name would justify any ability in this game having 80-second cooldown? Chorus of Spiritual Fortitude is an ability that makes you and your team invincible, gives them all of their toughness back, makes every other enemy stand around doing the hokey pokey for 7 seconds, and can push bosses off the ledge, can suppress everything in a 40-meter radius, and it has a 60-second cooldown. This ability gives you a free reload of your gun and nothing else, pretty much. You have to spend more points in order to get anything else. And let's look at Bullet Bravado here, our way of regenerating toughness when this ability is, and only while this is active, by the way. So for 10 seconds, every 80 seconds, you get this fabulous way of regenerating your toughness. 2.5% toughness for every shot fired. Wow, I can fire 40 shots in order to get my toughness bar back. Or I can reload 6.6 times and get all my toughness back. Sounds really reasonable and balanced. Meanwhile, you have Veteran with a 30-second cooldown on an ability that not only caps his toughness instantly from any value, but also overcaps it by 50 and makes him invincible to any damage until that 50 falls off, right? And he can do that without any interruption, plus he has absurd cooldown reduction on top of that. Like, this whole ability is such a waste, to the point where I tried to play a game with it and immediately regretted it. I said I would rather just not even use an ability and save the talent point than path through this thing, because it's literally that level of garbage. So this is just abjectly worthless on this class. It does not fit the fantasy. There are no guns on this class that are worth using with a ranged configuration with point blank barrage at all in any way, shape, or form. Fuck, I hate it. So I really, really do hate it. The only saving grace of this entire class right now is that Loyal Protector exists and it can regenerate toughness over time. And that is the thing. If Fat Shark watches this video or whatever, if you're looking for a way to make the Ogryn not be such absolute abysmal crap and feel awful, give him the Hive Scum talent. Give him the one where when he gets shot, I forget what it's called in Hive Scum, but when he gets shot, he regains toughness over time. That is what he needs. He cannot exist being a class that solely has high HP. High HP works fine at low difficulties. When you're playing Malice or below, which we cannot be taking our stats from there, by the way, in terms of like game balance. When you're playing Malice or below, 300 HP is more HP than the enemies can deal in the entire game, right? Unless you're just absolutely just like asleep at the wheel. So that seems like great then, but what happens when you reach Damnation? What happens when you reach Auric? And what happens especially when you reach Havoc and single shots, single melee attacks from like jobber enemies start dealing 60, 75 damage, right? You know, getting hit with 4 or 5 bullets when your toughness is broken as Ogryn is enough to put you down. So, like, this class just can't exist in what Darktide has become. Not in the way that he is. He doesn't have the tank. Doesn't have the survivability to do it. And even if you take some of these nodes up here, right, the damage reduction isn't the factor. He has plenty of damage reduction for days. It's just that he cannot sustain his health values. He can't sustain his toughness values without being in melee range of enemies, and getting in melee range of enemies is a fucking chore for this class. And that is really all I want to say. I don't know. I don't have anything else to say here. So update your fucking, you know, wall posters or whatever it is where you have the rankings of the Darktide classes. Ogryn's the worst class in the game. GG. It's really not even close, honestly. Fight me on it. All right. Thanks for watching, guys. Bye-bye.